You'll see in your handouts, the library is proposing a tax rate of 0.3240. And this we believe will more than adequately cover our budget for this year, which also has been printed out for your review. And the budget is next to Cody. If you want to look at it in detail and have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Just kind of a bird's eye view of how our priorities lay out for next year's budget. There's 4 areas of focus. The first is staff, personnel. The second is improving our financial system. This investment with staff and with software to help us modernize that process. Honoring our capital commitments, which you've probably heard lots about in our previous board meetings. And last is funds earmarked for research and development, which will help us continue being one of the most innovative library systems in the country. So in numbers, if there is one change that you would notice would be our staffing or our personnel costs have gone from 60 to roughly 61 point something percent. Am I right, Jennifer, in that? Yeah. And that is a change from our past practice of allocating 60% flat for personnel. But we're particularly proud of this change in that it's elevating the entry-level salaries of employees, and this will help us recruit a diverse and skilled labor pool. So we're very happy about that, and we're happy to provide a working wage for those who are employed in the library. So that is all I have. If anyone has questions, I'm here. And we also have the chair of our finance committee, Gordon Cook, and our board president, Ron Thewis, and Bob Johnson and Yummy. So we're happy to answer any questions. Dr. Pandolfi, excuse me. Yes. Anyway, excuse me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just so we don't sit here in silence.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Marcy Gregg, I reside in Independence, just a few blocks away from here, and grew up. This was my home library, always has been. As far as my kids are concerned, it always will be. They'll never let me do it. I just wanted to express my concern for past action of the board, which rolled back some of the tax impact to me. When I voted to raise the taxes for building capacity within this whole system, I was fully aware of the impact on my taxes and aware of the proposed program. I was also a person who's understanding that budgets fluctuate, that financial markets fluctuate, and so on. I was making a commitment that amount of dollars to come out of my wallet every year. I would encourage this board to consider that the taxpayers knew what they were doing, they did that. And that as we move forward, and the implications, any decisions that you make, might reconsider raising that back up to the center when the opportunity comes. I would have been thrilled if, for example, if you raise too much money, I would have been thrilled if you go not cut back to match what you appropriate. Because for a lot of families, particularly in this neighborhood, they don't have access to bookstores, they don't have access to online purchasing through Amazon and so on. This is the resource that our families in our neighborhood rely upon. We would rather see our tax dollars invest them wisely. If that means to share a little surplus and you can do more, I'd be thrilled with that. So, if you ask some comment, that's just my general remarks for how you proceed with budgets. I don't have something specific to this at this time.
Thank you.
My name's Brad Hughes. This is my wife, Carla, Lee Summit residents. And so we have lifelong advocacy of the library. My wife retired from Mid-Continent with over 25 years service. Her children grew up with the library system. Once they were old enough to move out on their own, our commitment to the library system certainly didn't diminish. We too were very excited with the budget lift and seeing all the construction, upgraded facilities, new facilities, talk of new programs. We maintain a relationship with library personnel and the like. And we too were disappointed with the setback of 2 years. And what I first of all offered, we certainly would love to see it not go beyond 2 years. And what has to happen to get it restored back on that path. We know we're late in the budget process to be able to do much with a 24 lift, but 25 I'd like to see not. And we've chatted with Aaron and the like and some of his staff members, and if nothing else, we would like to also understand what can we as community members, what can we do as users, patrons, advocates, how can we help influence that position to lift that back up on that run rate and not go beyond 24, but in 25 see a restoration of what we too voted in favor of and many citizenry did. What can we do to be helps there also and not just lay that burden just on current employees of Mid-Continent, board members and the like? What can we do to partner with you and help? How can we make that happen? So I guess what I'm saying, we're not trying to dump all this on everyone else's lap. We want to be partners in that as well to understand what can we do to help that situation return.
Well, thank you both for your comments. Each of you have demonstrated that you have a keen interest in how we manage the library, right? And I've only been here a short period of time. But what you'll see from administration over the next year is a demonstration of need, if there is one, right? In my budget message, I talk about some of the quote unquote challenges. However, I do think it's a useful exercise for us, this organization at this point in time. The budget that we proposed encouraged us to take a very kind of thoughtful look at our operations to identify places maybe that are in need of more resources and others which could be scaled back in response to changing community need. And so over the next year, what you'll see is proposals from staff on places that could use more investment or an adjustment in our personnel costs with the addition of 2 new branches. One of which is fully staffed at this time. It's a relocation, the other of which is not. But because you're here and you're listening and you're engaged in the process, your feedback on our proposals is welcome. So, I mean, I think this type of transparency and the demonstration of need is something that our county commissioners and the voters really would like to see. And that's what we're prepared to do. And I'll admit up front, I don't know what that need is right now. And I do acknowledge that it will take a lot of work to kind of explain what it is and how we plan on spending taxpayer dollars moving forward. But Brad and Marcy, to your points, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into what will need look like in the coming years. And we built this magnificent system that's really known throughout the country as being innovative, and we want to continue on in that tradition.
Agree more with your thoughts on lifting investment in staff and the like. I mean, since the country, but we can talk more generally about our own communities. I mean, nearly every business today has added on the words, now hiring, help wanted, whatever to their company name. So it is so competitive out there at this point in time, just to attract
Yes,
a staff to replace attrition, let alone just grow. There are needs just to attract people. There are different kinds of needs to retain those employees once you have attracted them. And then there's the whole creating and sustaining excitement in jobs and positions in the whole library and what they have to offer to the community experience. The skills of those interactions, it's unbelievable. I was reflecting a personal experience with Aaron just this week out in and it happened to be in the Buckner branch, and just the engagement with that staff, they're so exciting. They're so locked into what they do, so proud of what they do and what they have to offer. I just have to be out that way. Like I said, I live in Lee Summit, but those people just very excited about their work and proud of what they have to offer in library services and products and offering me things I could do on my own. I hate walking out of my own assignments, but that's what they gave me. But it's just a great experience. So I absolutely think the investment and outlet for personal development, well deserved. Right on with that one.
sure. Thank you. We're very fortunate. Everywhere I go, there's just a dedicated and passionate group of people that are working at the service of their communities. And to me, I mean, that's one of the main attractions to coming here to Mid-Continent Public Library. It's the staff that make all of this work on a daily basis.
If I could ask a couple questions since we're here chatting. You mentioned that the cost of employee services cost along the staffing costs in this budget. And as a not only patron of this system, but a patron of the independent school district, and recognizing that with a move to a 4-day week, we may have a really significant shift in need for public library services. Students are going to be asked to do more in less time, let alone teachers. Of course, I'm wondering if there's been any thought given in anticipation of what that impact might be to the library system in providing not only Monday opportunities, but what kind of staffing impact that might have. If you have kids who have no other place to be in this neighborhood, then they come here.
Right.
And they hang out. And thanks to the kids, the teens area, that's a great benefit. But I am concerned as a patron of both of those entities of what that's going to mean in terms of impact to your staff and whether that will require increase in expenditure.
Oh, we share that concern. So you're sitting next to Richie, and Richie is the head of our customer experience division. And in fact, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting here to talk about this very topic. So I'm happy to say that our independence branches have a plan in place, but much of that is based on things that we don't know, right? Like what will the experience look like in North Independence versus South Independence? We have room within this budget to pivot to accommodate young people when the need arises. But looking further down the road, this may be a trend in other communities. And so you're bringing up a good point. I mean, if other communities follow cities like Independence and shift to a 4-day school week, it really changes the dynamic in the neighborhood branch. And we want to be there to meet the need of the community. So our eyes are on it. We have a plan in place, and I'm confident that we have the resources to make new services available when the need arises.
I'm happy to hear that. We're told to expect a minimum 3 years at this before they decide whether it worked or not. We'll see. We still have the same superintendent after a couple of years, and there's still a third left. I don't know what that means for them. We may get it back or not, but that's 2 to 3 years that we're gonna have families who are struggling, and I know that some people, they rely on the libraries, if nothing else, and sometimes just as a respite place. Our families don't know what to do with childcare. You may have increased childcare in-home opportunities that come in, so.
Sure.
I would encourage you to be thinking 2 to 3 years.
Well, we have great branch managers at both locations. And this branch in particular is dear to me because one, the community reminds me a lot of where I began my career. But two, I drive past it every morning on my way into work. And I could just see people gathered outside waiting to get inside the library in the morning. And so what happens here and in other libraries in this area matters a lot to me. So paying attention to it. There's no time limit on this, so if you don't have any other questions, that's okay too.
Well, could I ask a question? I'm just wondering, since you guys are here, maybe you could share with us, like, what are, some of the best things that you have come out of this library system for you personally, and then maybe what things that you think we could, improve upon in the future. I think you've already touched on that a little bit, but I'm just curious.
Well, I will share with you my personal experience in the levy reduction. I've attended a library-led book group at the Colburn Road Library since 2015. And I believe they had three adult book groups and a teen book group. So in October of last year, we were told by the branch librarian that due to budget cuts that we would no longer have the staff-led book groups. So we thought about what to do. In my particular group, one of the persons in it used to be an area administrator, I think is what she called it. So she's taken on leading it, and we co-lead it. She does the leading of it and I do the paperwork. The other two groups, I think, have decided to lead their own, and so they've become community book groups. But what came out of that was sad for me was when they came in to tell us that they were going to stop leading those book groups because of budget cuts, was every member in the group basically said, well, I don't understand. I voted for Proposition L, but now you're saying you're cutting the budget, and so you don't have budget to do the book groups. And they just said, I won't vote again for money for the library. And that made me, I love the library. I worked there for 26 years, and that made me sad to hear that. But that's what came out of that.
So that really was important to have the staff lead it as opposed to someone, like yourself who's very bright.
Right, because if you have a staff led, that's her job, and she has the resources to get on the computer. Vicki and I, as library patrons, we took that on, but if for some reason we both get hit by a car next month, who knows if somebody's going to come in and step up to do it, and then it may disappear, as the other two library groups, which I think have continued as community book groups. Whereas if the library led, if she changed jobs, they would have put another staff person in charge of it.
I think your point with regard to compatibility with that school's ebb and flow, the need for technology, commonality of technology, be it hardware, software, whatever, applications, similarities, what's going on in the communities, the libraries have to be in a position to either be leading and setting the stage of what's needed and where people, schools, children, their homes, where they ought to be going to. And if they're not leading, they have to at least remain compatible And so innovation's an easy one to strike because nobody really wants to hit people or things of that nature when financials get tough. So technology research and development is it's a much easier place to strike and say, we'll worry about in the future. Well, you worry about it in the future, odds are you just never get caught up. And so you're always running behind. So that is a piece to need to really be concerned with and have huge situational awareness on what's going on and how we're going to stay. You cannot turn on the news for more than, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes today with the whole discussion around artificial intelligence and like social media. So it's something that's not going to leave us. It's not going to get away from us. So how are libraries positioning, considering remaining informed, both practically as what needs to be done and what's the financial basis to enable that to occur? So to me, that's a big one. And some of that's new. There's not a lot of places to go and research and really, here's what people have done because it's late breaking, it's emerging. So how do you stay in the forefront of that?
Coming back to the notion of kids and the usage of this facility, I don't know how many of you drive past here after hours, but there are often people in the parking lot in cars. And those are families who don't have the ability to afford internet service in their homes. We have a small scout troop, just 8 boys in it. One of our kids couldn't afford a Chromebook. And he was not in a traditional public school setting. But he had to do some work online. He didn't have internet at home. So I provided him an older Chromebook, and it was his routine to come here after school and access the internet to do his work. We have a number of things for him. That is a reality. And as school systems more and more rely on online platforms for their learning, kids and families are burdened with, how do you do homework at home when they can't afford those services? So if anything, and we've already said it here and said, this has been an innovative library system nationwide, being at the forefront of new things in development. That's what I want to continue to see it be, not just something that meets the minimum, standards and provide service at where we are now, but anticipating where we're going to be in the future. And in this neighborhood and in changing economy, more and more of our families and kids don't have access to technology. So if you're thinking forward, I would be thinking of ways to increase capacity at those computer terminals or increase capacity for what work, reaching out to the community and saying, making sure people know that resource is here. That and as well as children's programming. I've kind of been in this point where my youngest is 15. The next youngest is 21, so I had sort of a little gap here. We're in the middle of time here. We had a pandemic, so we sort of fell off of some of the in-person programming that occurred, some of the special events and things. We're sort of now swinging back into that. But with a 2-year-old granddaughter coming online, I know my son is up here weekly, here or in the branch for children's times. And so always continuing to provide those services, and particularly for families who don't have access elsewhere. So it's critical to me. Those are the features of the library system. It's not so much the books, I do enjoy these books, but I read a lot of things digitally. From when the kids were small, we'd go home with stacks for the summer reading program. You had the paper strip and you had to write everyone down. There's 20 books and we'd write them all. So it's not so much about the physical content, it's access to what a library can offer through digital content.
I hope we always keep some physical content.
Absolutely, there's absolutely place for that, but understanding that that's not where our kids are being led, even from our school systems. They have to be able to access, what they need for learning almost 24/7 these days, and so many of our families just can't afford that.
We noticed in Lee Summit at the Coleman Road branch and also at the Lee Summit branch, you'll see a few cars out in the parking lot after the library is closed. But I was going to mention another thing. Our children are almost 42 and 44, and when they were going to summer reading program, you got 5 free books and you fill out, there were the 5 sheets and they were all different colors. And it was a huge deal. And the reading program, summer reading program at the library was the biggie of the year. So I think they get 3 books now. I haven't stayed up to date with that, but I think it's 3 books. And I'm wondering with budget cuts if it'll be even less than the 3 books.
No, in fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but actually we raised that amount this year, right? In terms of, for the summer reading club?
No, the prices are the same as they were last year,
Ah,
but yes, it's the same. It's 3 prizes and then there is a grand prize.
And the grand prize. We didn't used to have the grand prize, I believe. Okay.
well, I'm glad you brought that up. So, like, I welcome this pause this year, one, so we can really think about what it is that we do best and what are the new things that we could bring online, right? Organizations of this size sometimes make the mistake of investing or weighting new ideas more than ones that already exist. So you bring up story time and you bring up summer learning program. To me, these are areas that are working extremely well and one of the biggest draws for young people to the library. With story time, there really isn't a digital replacement. And so the demand for that, I believe, will continue on for years to come. And so the question is, do you hold or do you invest more in it to kind of expand the service both in and outside of the library? Summer learning program, and just a quick little anecdote, which I think goes a long way. Of the many stories that are posted on Facebook, there was one recently of a young boy who I think read 1,000 books. I don't know if you saw this. The level of engagement on that single post is just remarkable. Like maybe 300 people from the community congratulated this young boy for his achievement. And that to me says that people really are focused on the right things. The other posts, you know, it's kind of hit or miss as to whether or not people engage with it. But this little boy standing there with a certificate and the acknowledgement just went a long way. We're at 5, I would say, that's his family. But when it's 300, I mean, that's just an outpouring of support. And I don't know. I mean, I love the shiny things. I love the new technologies. But when I see that, it's just a reminder of really what's most important for the future of the library and its programs and services like that. So you'll see both, but it's a balanced approach to the services we offer. And if you haven't seen the post, go check it out. The kid looks so happy. I forget what his name is. I wish I could mention it, but anyway, it's just a beautiful.
Aaron, I agree, and to that point, I will tell you that I have boxes of books at home that I've hung on to for when the grandchild comes along. And I guarantee you that there's a stack of them in there that are labeled that they were some of the programming books.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old was cleaning his room the other day, and came across a couple of books. What do I do? He said, well, hang on to them for Delaney. I mean, so, you know, books have lasting value, the actual physical copy. And you're absolutely right. It's not everything's digital, but you know, the impact that this system can make in a child's life is lifelong. It's generational.
Yeah.
The Harry Potter book that, you know, my then probably 12-year-old acquired will get handed down to his niece, you know, and continue to make an impact.
Agreed.
I think it's a good point you both made is that we need to, our technology just has to be compatible with, I mean, all the school districts that we serve, because that's a huge thing.
All right. Anything else for the?
Yeah, I just want to mention, it used to be on television, before they go to commercial, they say, just wait, the best is yet to come. And I've had just a flood of that feeling over the past few months. And just as an example, in And so just casual conversations with our new director. I mentioned what I think an absolute blessing it is to have a reading rocket where it's this huge bus that goes out into the community. And his comment totally surpassed mine. I said, yeah, maybe we have a lot of smaller ones that have the same service, but a lot more. And the efforts for the past half decade, of course, have been building these beautiful, gorgeous buildings. A lot of kids don't have the access to get there because maybe mom's having 2 jobs and their family circumstances and even the cost of gasoline. We can't go to these fancy, beautiful buildings. So maybe we can take the value of the library and being in J areas where there is, in my estimation, the most deserving and the most need. And they don't have the resources to get to the fancy buildings. But there are ideas by which we can bring the library to those people. Again, we're not going to see it. It's not going to make an architectural digest, but it's just going to help the kids.
To me,
So
there's-
again, the best is really yet to come.
To me, there's several examples where institutions have found that that's a pretty good strategy to take things into the communities. One that is very similar and equally successful. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but Kansas City Symphony. Everybody can't go down to Kaufman. And during the pandemic, to keep musicians viable and the community interested, one person there designed this approach. She was a volunteer, designed this approach of the music boxes. And so when you see these now, that they're going to have 3 or 4 musicians out in Olin Park, they're going to have them out someplace. She designed that whole idea and methodology during the pandemic. And it didn't stop when the pandemic stopped. And now that whole connectivity with communities, like you said, everybody can't make it down to Kaufman, that beautiful auditorium. Boy, everybody can go out and sit in a grass field and watch and hear the music and the like from that these musicians have to offer. To me, it's very similar to this whole connectivity with communities. And how do you have that exchange of what people are looking for and what people have to offer and connect them. So there's a lot of examples of that where that really works well.
I want to give another shout out to why I love libraries, and I call them the great equalizers. You mentioned our new beautiful buildings. Last week or the week before, we went up to see Green Hills. We called it our field trip because we live in Lee Summit, so it's a drive, and had lunch up there. And we stayed about an hour and read. And as we got ready to leave, we saw an older gentleman come in, and his shoes looked to be different colors. And of course, I had elderly parents, one with dementia, and I thought, I always put on their shoes, they don't match. And as I got closer to him, when we were walking out, he had duct taped his tennis shoe. Duct tape's not just gray anymore. Apparently, it comes in all kinds of colors, and this was orange. So he had duct taped his tennis shoe to keep it together. And yet he was in the Green Hills Library, and he was welcome there. He was either reading, using a computer, whatever he was doing, but he was as welcome there as anybody else. And that's what I like.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Well, Jennifer will close us out with a song.
We do have one other business check to officially close.
Okay.
Close the hearing.
Okay.
Michael, is Michael on the board? Close the hearing. Close the public hearing.
Oh, there needs to be a motion,
Yeah, I have one.
and I'll make that motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.